if you want to be happy for the rest of your life. Never make a beautiful woman your wife. So, from my personal point of view, make an ugly girl marry you. Pretty woman makes her husband look small, and very often becomes the reason for his downfall. Jimmy Soul, 1963. Todd Lofter Roman III was born too late to learn the lessons of Jimmy Soul's classic song. He was an ordinary guy in every way, except that he came from a medium-sized town in Pennsylvania and his family belonged to the upper crust there. He was 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighed 145 pounds, and had brown hair and brown eyes. He was a slightly above average student, getting mostly B's in high school. He was a slightly above average athlete, but never played sports outside of Little League. He attended judo classes at the IMCA. Despite his shyness, he did well in these courses from the age of 6. This allowed him to carry himself with some physical confidence. In college, a small liberal arts school in the middle of the state, he excelled only at poker in his fraternity. He didn't need the money he won, but he kept it anyway. His GPA was 3.0, which was a little above average, but nothing special. He didn't have to work hard to achieve this status. In his entire life, he had never been seriously tested. He was always sliding. In college, Todd took mostly liberal arts courses, but he had one scientific assignment that he put aside for a while. During his freshman year, he decided that he would take a computer programming course. In high school, he learned the ropes because his school had a computer. But in college, he became very interested in programming and computers in general. It was 1975, and the field was fairly new. Todd met Becky Dawson in a computer class in college. While still in high school, Todd dated girls from the same social circle as he and his family. Sometimes they were beautiful, sometimes not so much. Todd was timidly interested in women, as in other things. As a freshman in college, he dated and had sex with 2 women. When he was a sophomore, his dating pattern was similar. He lived with a woman, Joan Bagley, for most of the year, but they separated in the spring. However, they had regular sex for several months. So, when Todd met Becky, he wasn't completely inexperienced. Becky was wonderful. She was tall 5 feet 9 inches with brown hair and blue eyes. She had a slim figure and was quite athletic. She was also very smart. She and Todd were about the only 2 students in the computer class who actually knew what they were being taught. They realized this and formed a bond of sorts. Todd was single at the time, but Becky, a stunningly beautiful woman, was living with veteran football player Bradley Boston. Standing 6 feet tall, he was lithe and quick. He was the main player on the university team. At that time, football was not the main sport. But the U team was one of the best teams in the country, so Bradley got some attention. Becky invited Todd to her home to learn computer programming. Todd was happy to accept the offer. She and Becky drank coffee and started reading their books. Todd fell in love with Becky almost immediately. She was so smart, funny, and sexy. She wasn't really trying to be sexy. She was just like that. To some extent, she was aware of her influence on the guys. She took it in stride and adapted. Many of the men around her were tongue-tied. Others, like Brad, openly pursued her. Bradley quickly caught her. She was between the men when they met a year earlier. He was handsome and witty, and she liked that he played football. The sex between them was the best she had ever experienced. She actually had quite a lot of experience. She agreed to move in with Bradley at the beginning of his senior year and her junior year. By the time Todd was invited into the apartment, a month into the semester, Becky had already changed her mind about the move. The sex with Brad was still good, but he was often absent from practices and other events. For example, when Todd arrived, Brad had been on a business trip with his coach all week. Brad took sports classes in college and didn't have much of a need to study. On that first visit, Todd and Becky spent 3 hours going through the programming books they had. Although Todd was simply there for Becky, he was so interested in the material that he forgot that he was in love with her. They just worked on the material and helped each other with it. Bradley arrived around 11. Todd and Becky were just finishing up. Todd was walking towards the door when Brad opened it. Becky said, "Brad, "This is Todd from my computer class. We were just studying." Todd said, "Hi," and he extended his hand to shake. Brad refused the handshake. "Beck, you know there shouldn't be any guys here." "No, I don't know that. He's here to learn. He's the only person in my class who knows what he's doing. That's all. That's all." Brad looked at Todd. Todd saw Brad huddled together, ready to jump. Todd crouched slightly to prepare himself in case Brad attacked him. Brad didn't seem to notice, but he looked at Todd and seemed to relax. Brad said, "Sorry, perhaps I overreacted." He pushed the exit door open for Todd, and Todd walked out. The door closed. It didn't pop. Todd waited on the stairs for a moment to listen in case there was trouble. He heard a loud argument from Brad and Becky. Then everything seemed to get better. He left and returned to his room. The next computer lesson was a day off in 2 days. Todd arrived early, as did Becky. Todd said, "I hope you were okay after I left." She showed no obvious signs of physical conflict. "Yes, we quarreled, but then everything worked out. I saw you wait a while before going outside. Thank you." He seemed so angry at first. I don't want to be nosy, but does he have jealousy issues? I saw him get harsh with guys who checked me out when he was around. Nothing extreme, I think. Well, maybe we should just study in the union. No risk of conflict. That is, if you still want to study. Oh yeah, yes. Brad is traveling until Sunday, so we can do this in the apartment. Much quieter. Okay, well, tomorrow after 7. Yes, see you. They sat in class and were again impressed by each other's participation. After class, they went to the Union Diner for coffee. It was 10 in the morning. Becky asked, "Where are you from? How do you get so good at programming?" "My high school in Mountain City had a computer. It occupied 2 rooms. But some of us, could program it. That's how I got into this advanced class. I missed 2 introductory courses. I took them. This interested me. I think computer skills will be a huge plus after school." "Of course. And you? Where are you from?" "From Jenkinstown." She named a small town in the eastern part of the state. They continued talking about themselves. Todd described life at his Mountain City home, filled with country club golf and tennis. Becky loved tennis and played on the school team in high school. In college, however, she didn't stay in shape enough to join the team. Todd and she made a date of sorts to play tennis that afternoon. They met at the courts near campus, waited 10 minutes for a court to open, and played for almost 2 hours. They were evenly matched and had a great time. They didn't notice Brad until they stopped. Todd won the last set and Brad ran up to them. "You played well together," he smiled indulgently at them. "Equal match." "Yeah," Todd enthused. "I had a great time. Becky's a good player." "Not that good." She became a little shy. "You seem to really enjoy yourself, Beck. That's one of the secrets to success. That's why I'm good at football. I just love it." Brad was sincere about it. This made him think about his current situation. That night, he and Becky had wonderful sex. They woke up late in the morning. Becky said, "Brad, it was so amazing last night. There will never be a better lover than you ever." "Thank you, and you were great. But Becky, we need." "Well, when are you coming back from class?" "At 4. Why?" "I want to be here then. You'll understand." "Fine." She left for class, a little puzzled, but sex put her in a fantastic mood. This went on all day. While she was in programming class with Todd in the morning, she started thinking about the night before. When classes ended, she and Todd went to the cafeteria. Becky was distracted. She held Todd's hand as they walked. As they sat down with coffee, Todd said, "You seem distracted this morning. What's wrong?" Becky blushed and looked down. "I had a great time last night. Sorry, probably too much information. Just to explain." Todd was now blushing. Well, you can always talk to me, you know. There's no such thing as too much information here." He smiled a shy smile that turned into a small smirk. Becky saw all these changes on his face and began to laugh. She laughed for a long time, and her sexy face turned red. I think you might be a pervert, Todd. Horny. I'm excited about you, Becky. That's all. Now he was really blushing, but he was looking straight at her. Todd, I really love you. You know that, but I'm with Brad. He's not perfect. He's not even my friend like you. But he's just good. Oh, that's the thing. He's a great lover. You saw me this morning. Oh, yes, I saw you, and I'm so happy that we're friends. But I'm human, and you're so crazy sexy. You have no idea. You should know that on some level. I am who I am, and being sexy isn't that bad. She gave him a sly smile. She brought her hand to Todd's mouth and kissed him. She then let go of him and turned to leave. Todd was completely stunned. He sat there looking at her sexy buttocks as she walked away. After a short time, Todd went straight back to his room where he had some privacy. You know what he did. Becky was in another class. She sat on it, but thought about Bradley and Todd. She didn't quite understand why she did this to Todd. If they were alone, she would attack him and make love. She had never had such thoughts about him before. He wasn't bad looking, but he wasn't on Brad's level. But he definitely had potential. But Brad could always turn her into jelly. She was embarrassed, truly for the first time in her sex life. This was a problem. Brad solved this problem in the evening. He decided to end his relationship with Becky. It was not an easy decision, especially after the fantastic sex last night. He knew he had outdone himself. He also knew that it was because he had decided that this would be the last time with Becky, and he wanted it to be truly unforgettable. And boy, was it unforgettable. But Brad was determined. He saw the interaction between Todd and Becky. They had something that he had never had with any woman. They were really compatible, good friends. He wanted it, and he didn't have it with Becky. He liked her. She was cute and very, very sexy. But he decided that he needed to look for true love in a different direction. At heart, he was a romantic. So he sat down with Becky this evening. You're in love with Todd. He looked at her carefully. I'm not mad. I saw it happen, and I know you didn't count on it. But it is. You need to take him to bed and drive him crazy. But Brad, last night. Maybe we can break up every month. Brad smiled. You don't seem to be taking this hard. I'm hurt, devastated. Becky began to cry. I'm sorry, Brad. I can't say I love you, but you're so satisfying. And you're a good guy, too. You give me away. Me. It's for your own good. That's what my father told me when he took out the belt. He was usually right. You know, Todd hit on me this afternoon. I was in such a sexual trance that he dared me. I was excited all morning, thinking about you, you rat. So what happened? I kissed him at the buffet. Then I left swaying my hips. He probably ran straight to his room. You know, you can teach him a lot of things that you like. He will listen. In fact, you need to be careful not to suppress it. Maybe I'd like it. I won't be able to forget you anytime soon. Maybe a new approach is needed. Just give him his manhood. Otherwise, the relationship is doomed. Look at me, I'm becoming like Ann Landers. He started laughing, but then it turned into tears. They cried together for a while. Where should I go? I need a place to sleep. Becky was still sobbing. I thought about it. I rented a room above the Mason restaurant. You can stay here. Of course, Todd can help. He's pretty well off. Most of my stuff is no longer here. Bradley, can you stay one more night? Not all night. Last night was the last. But he stood up, picked her up, and kissed her tenderly. He spent an hour with her. It was gentle sex. Then he left her alone. She cried a little more, but in the end, she realized that his words made sense. She had to figure out how to tell Todd that he was now hers. She giggled. She believed that he would not resist too much. She started planning. The next morning in programming class, Becky was especially friendly with Todd. Todd was still confused and excited about last night's kiss. He noticed that Becky often smiled at him and touched his hand. This continued while they drank coffee at the cafeteria and discussed classes. When Todd had to go to his next class, Becky said, "I'm at my house tonight for a study session, maybe at 7. Okay, see you then. You'll definitely see me." Becky thought this, but didn't say it. She gave him a smile that made him tremble. Todd wondered what was going on, because, in his opinion, Becky started flirting with him. There was a kiss, and then today's events. He was distracted all day, but he did not go to his room for privacy. He hoped. He got lucky. When he arrived at the apartment, Becky opened the door barefoot and wearing a sleeveless dress. She brushed past him as he entered. He immediately noticed that she didn't have a bra. She looked amazing as she walked up to him. As she approached, he took her hand and pulled her towards him. She stepped away from him and said breathlessly, "I want you now." She threw off her dress and stood naked in front of him. She thought he found the situation incredible. Well, she will show him. They had sex. She kissed him and lay down on him with her head next to his. "You were so good, Todd." She whispered it. "You're my hot toddy." She was honest without trying to boost his ego. He still couldn't answer in words. He stroked her head. They lay there for a while, then Becky stood up, standing on the bed above Todd. It was a bed on a platform. She smiled at him. She placed her foot on his chest and flexed her arms in a victory pose. "I won you, Todd. You're mine now." She continued to smile, but she wasn't joking. She felt it, the power she had in being so desired. She really liked it. Todd came to his senses. He looked at Becky as she declared her victory over him. He was overwhelmed by the feeling that she had won him. She felt completely in control, but she remembered Brad's words about not completely suppressing Todd sexually. She loved him, his enthusiasm for her, computer work, and tennis too. She didn't want to enslave him. Well, maybe so, but she knew she had to use her sexual power over him with a light touch. "You were great, Todd. More than I ever expected. You are a born stallion. I will teach you everything about how to please me." That night, they had sex almost constantly. She made a quick breakfast after they showered and brushed their teeth. Then they went to class. They each had an 8 o'clock class and then a computer class at 10 in the morning. The computer instructor noticed that they were distracted and continued to touch each other. She smiled to herself. She wondered if they would get to that point. Becky was so desirable, and she was with a football player. Todd, in her opinion, was sexually naive. But here they were in love with each other. She began to consider the possibilities from Becky's point of view. This distracted her. She decided that perhaps she could arrange a private lesson with them. She became even more distracted. Her name was Beth Garson. She was only 22. Computer instructors were in demand, and she was good, despite her age. Beth decided to pursue the idea of tutoring. She was definitely interested. But neither Todd nor Becky noticed. After class, they went to the cafeteria to study. But it was a lost cause. They hurried back to the apartment and had sex. Most of the day, Todd invited Becky to dinner at a trendy place out of town. They ate very little. Returning to the apartment, each of them decided to try to study. They succeeded. When they started doing computer work, they got so involved that it was only 11 hours before Becky decided to take Todd to bed. As the semester continued, Becky and Todd continued their studies as well. Sometimes Becky dominated him. Sometimes she had him as an equal. Once or twice she wished he would put her in her place. But he knew from the very beginning where she belonged. He was deeply in love with her, but wondered how long their relationship would last since she was so hot and pursued by many studs. And he knew that in this sense he was not at the highest level. She was. Todd and Becky also noticed Beth Garson's interest. Becky noticed it mostly. When Beth invited them to her teaching coding class, Becky thought Beth had something more in mind. She wondered what. She found it interesting. Becky got dressed for her study session. Todd just wore jeans and a sweatshirt. When they knocked on her door, Beth answered wearing a cotton shirt and flip-flops. Beth was far from beautiful. She was a little plump, but at the same time lanky. She was almost 6 feet tall. She had dull brown hair and a larger than usual nose, giving her the appearance of a hawk. She had a strong jaw that gave her a masculine appearance. And one more thing, she had one brown eye and one green. This unusual feature gave Beth a tense appearance. Overall, she was unusual, but not sexy. What saved her from real ugliness was her energy and cheerful dedication to her studies. Her face lit up when she talked about computers. At 22, Beth had a checkered sexual past. She knew how to lure people into her bed, man and woman. She decided to try to get Todd and Becky too. Beth had an open bottle of wine when Todd and Becky arrived. Becky smiled. This should have been interesting. Todd didn't know anything at this point, but not for long. Becky and Todd sat on the small love seat, and Beth sat across from them on the other. They drank wine and talked about the computer class, but Beth had no books or papers on the table between the sofas. He and Becky exchanged glances that lasted longer than expected and ended with them smiling at each other. Todd noticed this, but didn't understand. Becky stood next to Todd and walked into Beth's kitchen, just looking around. When she turned around, Beth was sitting next to Todd with her arm around his shoulders. Todd looked uncomfortable, but he didn't leave Beth's side when Becky came back into the room. Becky walked over to Todd's side of the couch. She leaned over him and kissed him. Todd was confused but answered. All three of them had sex. Beth said, "Well, I'd call it a successful study session. A lot was accomplished, don't you think?" She smiled. Becky and Todd laughed. Becky said, "You planned this all out so well. I'm impressed." "A girl like me needs to work at it, Becky. You don't, but I do. So I decided to seduce you both. As you can see, I like both of you." Todd sighed. "I'm so far behind, in sex. Becky knew why we came here. She dressed for it, and I was clueless. I feel inadequate." Beth said, "You're a guy. You always start behind." She and Becky giggled. Then they both attacked him on the couch. Soon after, Becky and Todd went home and had sex on their own bed. The next morning, Becky asked Todd, "What do you think of Beth's body? Pretty good, right?" "Yes, but not like yours. Besides, she's not pretty, but she's so strong. This is something new." After that night, the next programming class was filled with sexual tension. Even some of the uninformed botanists noticed this. They later invited Beth back for a sequel. The rest of the year passed in the same spirit. Both Todd and Becky stayed for the summer, working on a programming course. Beth was in her hometown until September. When Beth returned, the three of them began dating again. While they continued their sex sessions, they also worked hard on programming. It turned out that the two women were more technically savvy, but Todd made leaps that sometimes led to dead ends, but sometimes led to big breakthroughs. The three sold several programs to a local company and split the money. One of these programs allowed the company to bypass a long line of code. The company Jane Enterprises made money. When Becky and Todd graduated, they were both offered jobs at Jane Enterprises. They accepted the offer. Todd proposed to Becky, and she accepted. They were married on July 4th at Becky's parents' country club. Then they settled near the school and began working at Jane Enterprises. Beth was at their wedding. The three discussed the idea of marital fidelity and what Beth could expect when Becky and Todd tied the knot. Becky and Todd decided that Beth would be the only exception to the rule of fidelity. Beth agreed to this. She liked sex with Becky because Becky was so passionate and beautiful. But she was falling in love with Todd. He was good at sex and a really nice guy. She appreciated it. She'd met enough assholes. With Todd and Becky, she always felt good after sex. Additionally, she and Todd were almost equally strong physically. On the other hand, Beth was a little submissive with Becky. Becky just seemed able to control sex. She noticed that Becky could do the same thing to Todd whenever she wanted. and she believed that Becky held back with Todd without completely dominating him. Beth was thinking about marriage. She saw that sometimes Becky switched roles with Todd. Becky also seemed to like it, being on the bottom. But only Todd could do this, not Beth. Beth thought carefully about what might happen to Todd and Becky. After all, she didn't think it would work out for them. She wanted to be there to pick Todd up and comfort him when it happened. The marriage to the third person seemed to be going well. Todd and Beth worked on programming for Jane Enterprises. Becky started there, but then moved into a management role within the company. This happened 2 years later. Jane Enterprises was run by two brothers, Bart and Brett Massey. But in reality, Bart was in charge. He was the older brother. He was 40 years old. He was over 6 feet tall, slender, and gave the impression of strength. Brat was cunning, but smaller and much less imposing. When they were together, all attention was focused on Bart. Becky found herself working with Bart when she moved into a management position. Bart soon began to pursue her. He did it openly. Todd and Beth were in another department, hard at work programming. They had great success in simplifying the material and saving what was then valuable computer space. But their concentration prevented them from noticing what was developing between Becky and Bart Massey. It all came to a head at the company picnic on the 4th of July. Everyone was there, and Beth, Becky, and Todd arrived in the same car. Todd thought Becky looked a little depressed, maybe nervous. They hadn't discussed work lately, so Todd was surprised when they arrived at the picnic and the big boss, Bart Massey, greeted them. He shook hands with Todd and Beth and thanked them for their work. He then hugged Becky and led her to the food table. At this point, Todd began to worry about his marriage. Becky didn't even turn around. Todd watched as Becky and Bart walked around people, greeting them as if they were a couple. He turned to Beth. "What's going on here? She's with him, not with us. I heard something the other day, that he was hitting on her. I didn't think much of it. All the men want her. But looking at them, something is wrong." Beth decided to intervene. She took Todd's hand and they walked over to Becky, who was standing next to Bart. There were other people from the office nearby. Todd touched Becky's shoulder and motioned for her to follow him. Becky hesitated. "Todd, I'll be with you in a second." She turned back. Beth poked her in the back. Becky turned around, surprised. Todd said, "Now, Becky, I need to talk now, not later." This caught Bart's attention. He said loudly, "Todd, boy, Becky is with me now. You can talk later." Todd got angry. "Not now." He turned to Becky. "Come with me, Beck." Becky told Bart, "I'll be right back." She glared at Todd and Beth, but she went with them. Bart watched them go. He looked carefully at Becky's back. He was determined to lure her away from this loser, and he thought today could be that day. Todd spoke to Becky once they were far enough away from Bart. "What's going on here, Becky? Are you involved with the boss? We're married, you know." Beth simply watched and listened. Becky said, "Todd, I admit I like Bart, but nothing happened. Nothing will happen until we talk about it." "What does that mean? He treats you like his woman, and everyone here seems to accept that. Explain why that is." "He's been hitting on me. Well, ever since I moved into management. I told him I liked him. Todd, you've always had 2 women, even when we were married. Maybe I can have another one too. A man." "Becky, Beth and I agreed before we got married. She's with both of us, not just me. I don't want you bringing this guy into our marriage. If you want to be with him, you need to let me know in time, so I can make changes." "Which changes?" "We would have gotten divorced. When we got married, we made rules. This guy is a huge violation. A mistake we will never be able to overcome. Do you understand?" "Okay, I understand. I won't bring this up again. I think we should leave this picnic now, before this guy starts embarrassing us, both me and you. He will. I'll cool it down. Come with me." Becky took Todd's hand and walked towards Bart. Bart watched them. He approached them. Becky said to Bart when they were close enough to talk. Bart, Todd is upset about the way we interact here, and I think he's right. He's my husband. You're not the husband. In fact, where is Rose? Rose was Bart's wife. She couldn't come today. Look, Becky, your husband needs to be a little more flexible. We didn't do anything. It may look like it, but it's not. Todd said, Mr. Massey, I believe nothing has happened yet. But I also believe that you will continue to harass Becky. You are her boss. Even in this state, it could be considered harassment. You need to stop. Becky was scared and annoyed. She liked Bart's attention. Just a few minutes ago, she was actually asking Todd for permission to have sex with him. Now Todd was completely indignant. She started to get angry with him. She said, Todd, I can handle Bart on my own. She frowned at Todd. Beth was right there and overheard the conversation. She said, Becky, maybe you haven't been handling it so well lately if the rumors are anything to go by. Bart said, Everyone just calm down. Let's step aside for further discussion. There's no need for that. Todd said, We're just leaving. He took Becky and Beth, one by each hand, and they left. They got into the car and drove away. Becky was beside herself with anger. You two may have put me out of a job. I could handle it. Todd responded, Your way of dealing with him may leave a lot to be desired. Beth chimed in, Why is everyone in the office saying you and the boss are a couple, Beck? Well, maybe I got too close to him. I like him. Todd was furious. Yes, you love him so much that you asked me for permission to sleep with him. I will never give that up. Becky was ashamed of this. She knew she shouldn't have done this. She knew this could cause big problems. What can we do? I work for him. He'll keep pushing me. I really don't know if I can keep this clean. Then quit. I'll quit too. Beth still has a teaching scholarship at the university. What would we do? I'm not quitting, Todd. I think it's the only way, Beck. Otherwise, just let me know when you decide to sleep with him, if that's what you want. I don't want to. I don't want to. She began to cry. When they got home, Beth said she was going to her place for a while. Todd and Becky sat on the couch, not saying a word. Becky decided to soften the situation. She turned to Todd and kissed him. He was reluctant at first, but couldn't resist her. She took his hand and led him to bed. They lay there a little longer, and Beth came in the evening. They prepared a modest dinner because they expected to eat at the picnic. And then Beth brought up the elephant in the room. You know, I still have my teaching fellowship. We can all retire from Jane Enterprises. It's Todd and I who bring their new prosperity. Mostly Todd. He constantly comes up with creative solutions to improve the programs. He's a genius, and I understand it and turn it into a finished product. We could start our own business with Becky's help and sales. Todd said, I'm all for it, Becky. Well, that would solve the problem with Bart. I'm sorry for even thinking. You know, my fault. I'm weak and I'm ashamed of it. You know, Beth, we have a place for you here. You could move to cut costs. And so they did. Todd and Beth arrived at Jane's offices. They copied the latest developments they were working on onto disks. Todd did something else he didn't tell Beth. He put some code into a nearly finished product that they couldn't take with them. This code would significantly slow down the marketing of the product. Someone will have to find the problems he will create, and none of the current employees will be able to do it quickly. Beth actually moved. She had a bed in a small room near the kitchen. But when she started spending most nights with Todd and Becky, they simply bought a bigger bed. Their strange relationship settled into a pleasant rhythm that suited everyone. Jane's company made a big fuss when 3 of them resigned. Bart and Brett asked for a meeting. The 3 agreed. The meeting was to take place in a conference room at a local Holiday Inn. Todd didn't want the brothers on their property. All 3 arrived a little late, and the brothers were already waiting with a lawyer and a stenographer. Todd looked around the room, turned, and walked out. The 2 women, somewhat surprised, followed him. Bart followed them out. "Hey, where are you going? Stop." Todd turned. He said one word, "ambush," and three left. They got into the car and were driving away when Bart jumped in front of the car. Luckily for Bart, Todd wasn't driving. Becky was. If Todd had been driving, Bart would be dead. Beth, maybe. Todd got out of the car. "Get out of the way, bastard. If you don't, I'll take the wheel." Bart stepped aside. The lawyer, a plump young guy, approached them. Bart said, "What's the matter with you? We need to discuss our argument." Todd said, "This guy is a lawyer, right?" "And what?" "And you had a stenographer." "I don't want anyone to misunderstand what's going to be said. This protects you as much as it protects me." Todd decided to end it short. He spoke calmly. "For the last few months, you have been trying to seduce my wife. This is what led you to this problem. And you have no way out of it. I agreed to a meeting to clear this up. That's all. Understand? Listen, Becky is an amazing woman. So I tried. I'm sure a lot of guys tried. You're just mad because I almost succeeded. And it's true. That's why we'll never work for you again." Becky interrupted. "Bart, I don't want to be around you. You're married. I'm married. What were you doing? I have tried to give you an unforgettable sexual experience as many times as possible. I will stop if necessary." Todd said, "I don't believe you." Bart replied, "It sounds like you don't trust your wife." Beth was driving now. She started the engine. Todd looked at Becky and motioned for her to get into the car. They left. As Todd contemplated the meeting, it bothered him that Bart was right when he said he didn't trust Becky. Todd had no doubt that Becky would end up in Bart's bed, or at least somewhere where he could have sex with her. Todd decided to discuss this with Beth, and then possibly Becky. The next day, Todd went with Beth to her class. As they walked, Todd asked her, "Do you have any opinion about what happened with Becky and Bart? Because he was right when he said that I don't trust her. I think she's susceptible to alpha males, men who exude power. Sometimes she asks you to be that way with her. But at the end of the day, we all know which one of us is in control. It's not you and it's not me." "Well, yes, but do you think it could happen again? It was completely unpredictable for me." "What if it happens again? How would you react if Becky had already slept with Bart?" Todd thought, I don't know. I was really angry when I saw everything at the picnic, and when she wanted another man for herself. I was really angry. Would you be able to survive that? I mean, what happened when I left you two alone after that? She put me in my place under her. I didn't have the strength to stop her, even now when I talk about it." He smiled at Beth. "Maybe we can find a secluded place." "Not right now, but I'm always ready to dance." They reached the academic building and entered the classroom. Todd was a guest lecturer. He was going to talk about thinking outside the box. He spent some time thinking about how often he himself moved forward. He discussed this with Beth. He realized that he sometimes started at the end and thought backwards. Of course, sometimes ideas just came to him. He could never teach it because he didn't understand it himself. But other technology could be discussed. After class, he and Beth hurried back to the apartment. Becky was supposed to be at a university seminar on management techniques. Todd and Beth immediately went into the bedroom and took off their clothes. Beth pushed him onto the bed, but he pushed away. They started wrestling, rolling around on the floor. After a while, Todd took over and sat on Beth's chest. He tensed. They started laughing. Then they made love. Beth said, "Next time we fight, I won't let you win." She giggled. This excited Todd. "If you beat me, what will you make me do?" "I'll think about it. But one day I'll definitely win. Maybe tomorrow." Becky returned around dinner time. Todd and Beth made stew. They were eating and Becky announced, "Guess who I saw in the student union?" Todd looked at her. "Who?" "Bradley Boston. He returned from England. He will play in the new league that starts here. How is he doing? I heard he got injured playing in England. He had a knee problem that he said is almost healed. I invited him to dinner tomorrow. We can catch up. Beth said, does he have local housing? He's looking. He's staying in a hotel for now. The team owner put him there. Todd said, well, it'll be nice to see him. He didn't mean it. Beth knew this, but Becky probably didn't. She just seemed excited. Becky was not a stupid woman. She was just a little self-centered and sometimes didn't show enough empathy. Later that night, Todd and Becky made love. Todd and Beth watched as Becky prepared for Brad's visit for dinner. She bustled around, cleaning and preparing lasagna for dinner. Beth made a salad and Todd went to the bakery to get a cake. Todd felt uneasy about the entire evening, especially as he watched Becky get ready. Brad was due to arrive at 7, and Becky spent time getting dressed. She wore a tight cotton dress with sandals. Todd didn't notice the underwear line. You're dressed to kill, Beck. I really hope we don't have any problems tonight. But looking at you, I'm expecting some. Oh, Todd, there won't be any problems. I hope so. He's an old friend, you know. Beth said, Becky, you're going overboard dressing like that, and you know it. What's the matter? Nothing. I just want to look good for. Well, Brad, show him what he's lost. There was a knock on the door. Becky rushed to her and greeted Brad with a hug. Todd and Beth waved. They discussed how things were going in England. Before his knee injury, Brad was ready to move up to the big leagues. He thought that when he recovered, he would be able to sign a contract for good money. Brad asked, how are things here? Heard something about you three from friends. Sorry, I couldn't make it to the wedding. Todd said, well, we have sort of an arrangement, the three of us. It works for us. Are you seeing anyone? No, I dated informally there. The girls all love football players. That's what they call us. But I haven't met anyone who's interested in me after a few dates. Becky said, I'm sure you'll succeed, Brad. You're handsome and successful. Lots of women will be after you. When does your training season start? Not until 4 weeks later. I'm doing rehabilitation at the stadium with the coach of the old team. 3 hours in the morning. Then, I'm free. He looked at Becky. Maybe we can have lunch then. Now dinner is almost ready. The food was tasty and filling. Brad praised Becky's cooking skills. When we were together, you weren't that good at cooking. Todd is a good influence on you, just like I said. Beth said, of course, without a doubt. Otherwise, she wouldn't have married him. It was an open compliment to Todd, a reminder for Brad. Todd didn't believe he needed such a reminder. After dinner, Todd served coffee. When he left the room, Brad sat in his place next to Becky. When Todd returned, he set down a tray of coffee. Then he looked straight at Brad. Bad move, Brad. Everyone knew what he meant. Okay, I just wanted. Becky chimed in, Todd, don't worry, it's okay. Brad stood up and returned to his place in the chair opposite Beth. The conversation became somewhat tense after that. After Brad drank his coffee, he said, well, I have an early rise tomorrow, so I'll go. Thanks for dinner, Beck. Oh, and Todd and Beth too. He smiled. Todd didn't smile back. Beth just stood there. Becky walked Brad to the door, where she hugged him not too much. She said, bye, Brad. All three cleaned up after dinner and coffee. Todd said, well, we still have some good cake. They each took a piece. Becky only took a small piece. Then Beth stood up in the living room and slowly took off all her clothes. Todd and Becky were at first surprised and then fascinated. They made love. Todd was satisfied, but he noticed that Becky didn't wear underwear to dinner with Brad. He remembered this for later discussion. He could have brought it up sooner because he noticed the missing panty line. But Beth distracted them both. The morning brought sunshine and joy. Last evening's events were not unusual for them. What was unusual was the fact that Beth took on the dominant role with Becky. Becky was usually the leader, and even if only slightly, she had power. Becky cooked eggs for breakfast. Second time in a row, Beth and Todd went to work. Todd rented a small room nearby for his new computer and business. Beth also had a table there. When Beth finished class, she went to the office. Todd worked as if in a trance. He may not have realized Beth was there. This lasted 10 minutes. Beth knew not to interrupt him. Todd looked up. "Look at it." He pointed to the printed program that had just started coming out. Beth looked. She was puzzled at first, but then she realized what Todd had done. You removed all the unnecessary stuff. Will it still work? Let's watch." He launched the program through a larger one. The result was almost instantaneous and completely correct. "Works." Beth said, "We'll probably make a lot of money." "Possibly, probably, but how exactly?" They discussed this for some time. Who would pay? Beth then changed the subject. "Todd, what did you think of last night's dinner?" "You mean I think about Becky and Bradley, and will they try anything?" "That's exactly what I mean. And I feel uneasy, like I wonder where she is now. What about you?" "The same." "Beth, he really brought us together when he couldn't have." "Okay, but he seems to want her. At least sex." Todd thought for a moment. "He mentioned that he'd heard about the three of us. I wonder if he thinks he might join us as a fourth." "You're probably right. If he suggests it to Becky, what will she say? And if she wants it, what will you do?" "I'll say no, Beth. I understand why he might think he can participate, but you're an exception to our vows, and he's not." "Okay, I thought you'd say that. I guess we'll just have to see what happens." What happened was that Becky had lunch with Brad outside the stadium. They were sitting at a picnic table. Becky bought 2 sandwiches and drinks. Brad said, "Thanks for the sandwich, and for dinner last night." "Please." She smiled at him, and he smiled back. Becky said, "What's on your mind, Brad? I see you're thinking about something." "I want to have sex with you, Beck. I missed that. And I missed you. It was a mistake to push you away. I'm married to Todd. I love Todd. I won't cheat on him, Brad." "But you would like to have sex with me. I know that." "I can't deny it. I still remember fondly our last night. Insanely good." "Todd has Beth too. I don't really understand their relationship. Maybe I could join as a fourth person. After all, Todd isn't limited to just you. Why wouldn't that apply to you too?" "Because before we got married, we agreed on Beth. We both enjoy sex with her. And maybe Todd will agree to, me for a while." "I think he won't agree. I think he won't agree." "Oh, why?" "Brad, I was recently attracted to another man, and I didn't hide it." Todd was very angry. To put it mildly, this episode was a lesson for me. I wouldn't even dare bring it up with him. And then there's Beth. Beth is an interesting woman. It means you're not attracted to her. She's very strong, and she's got a great, wiry body. Perhaps I could be persuaded, but it seemed to me that she was not disposed towards me. Every straight woman is attracted to you. You know it, you're smug. Casanova. Maybe I should ask Beth out. Infiltrate. The way you describe her, I might like it. That's interesting. I have no idea if it will work. Becky, if you want to get back together with me, not just for sex for the rest of the season. No, I'm married. Married to 2 people. I would take you away if I could. Becky started crying. Brad was stunned. What? I want you so bad, Brad. I don't want to hurt Todd. I don't know what to do. Please, please leave me. Let it go. Okay, bye. They broke up. Becky found herself in a difficult situation. She planned to be with Todd forever. She wanted his children. She liked Beth, perhaps more than just liked her. But among the 3 of them, there was no clear path forward. They didn't even discuss it. Becky wondered if Beth wanted children and if she wanted children with Todd. Then, thinking about all this, Becky began to cry again. She returned to the apartment and Todd and Beth were expected back soon. She cried while preparing meatloaf and greens. Sweet potato. Good food, if not very healthy. Todd and Beth came home smelling dinner. They seemed happy. Becky wasn't there. She was distraught, and as she served dinner, tears began to flow from her eyes. Beth said, "Why are you crying, Becky? Dinner is great." "I can't talk about it." After eating, they ate. Becky stopped crying and picked up the plate. There's no point in starving. They cleaned and rinsed the dishes before loading them into the dishwasher. Then everyone sat down in the living room. Becky said, "I had a long talk with Brad this afternoon. He wants to be a part of our lives. I didn't know what to say. I asked him to let me go." Todd asked, "Did he hit on you?" "No. Well, he doesn't need to pester me. He knows how I feel about him, about having sex with him. I asked him to let me go." Beth said, "Becky, maybe you just need to tell him to stay away." "Well, aside from the sex issue, I like him. He's a friend. He's smart and kind. He referred me to Todd." Turning to Todd, "Do you remember?" "I remember." Todd saw things that really bothered him. Becky was so emotional, too emotional. If she was just going to send Brad away, she wouldn't cry. That's what he thought. What would make her cry the most was leaving Todd for Bradley. He said, "Becky, this is the second time in a short time that I've been worried about you. That other guy was a jerk. But Brad, as far as I remember, no. Maybe he'll become a jerk if he's hitting on a married woman. Todd, he doesn't want to cheat," he said, "but he wants sex. With me. I can't say I can always say no." "Why? Is it much better than what you have?" She started crying again. There was no other reaction. After a minute or two, Todd said, "I think I have the answer." Becky ran to the bedroom, crying. Todd and Beth looked at each other. He said, "So what now? I think she's going to leave, and I think maybe we should just let her go. This guy's going to be here all year. If she sleeps with him a few times, will it all end for you?" "Well," he smiled, "despite my current situation, I don't want to share. I don't think this is a possible long-term way of living. The three of us seem okay. For now." "But Beth, will we have children? All three of us?" "Perhaps. Why not? But let's get back to Becky. Maybe we need to clear things up. Now, don't sleep with other guys. She knows that about everyone but him, but maybe not about Brad. I think she knows. That's why she's crying. She's leaving." Becky stood at the door. She heard the last words. "I'm not leaving." The other two stared at her. Beth said, "What are you going to do with Brad? Because if you start sleeping with him, you're leaving, I think." Becky turned to Todd. "Will you divorce me?" Todd hesitated. He turned away. Tears appeared in his eyes. He sobbed, "Perhaps. Probably. Oh God, Becky. Just tell him to leave." Everyone was crying now, even Beth, who had seen most of this coming. They cried together until Beth stopped. She said calmly, "We don't need to decide anything now. Let's have sex." Becky looked at her and Todd. "Okay." They returned to the bedroom and undressed. Becky purred, "Sex is always the solution to any problem. Good sex, no problem." The three got out of bed and returned to the kitchen. They postponed the discussion until the rest of the evening. They had sex again that night and even slept a little. In the morning, Todd and Beth, both naked, began to fight over the toothbrush. They wrestled with each other, rolled on the floor, and got excited. Todd finally grabbed the toothbrush and stuck it in his mouth. "Ha!" Beth started laughing before she tried to take it back. She and Todd were now rolling on the floor laughing. Becky was laughing too, but she wasn't really in the mood to laugh. She saw how much Beth and Todd loved each other. She thought about it long after everyone had left the house. She went to Bradley. Brad opened the door. So, what brings you here, Beck? I need to talk. I don't want sex right now. Just talk. He invited her inside. She asked, Brad, let's say I leave my current lovers for you. I mean, I want kids and marriage. What about you? Brad was surprised. What gave you that idea, Becky? I looked at the two of them this morning. We had sex all night. And here they are in the morning, fighting over a toothbrush. They were laughing so hard. They are clearly deeply in love. Oh, they both love me too. But it's like you don't fit in. Third wheel. Not a third wheel. If Beth and Todd and I had kids, how would this all fit in? We probably wouldn't be accepted here, and neither would the kids. Remember when I left you before? I thought you and Todd had something we didn't have. I was wrong about us. I just didn't know. I was young. I've been kicking ever since myself for this, and I am a football player. He smiled. Well, you just laid out things that were part of what I thought at the time. Beth and Todd are more compatible. Better match. You're better suited to me. But I mean, is that true? It's been so long. I'm so not sure. She sighed in disappointment. Becky, you know that if we get together, the sex will be fantastic. I know. Oh, I know it. Becky sighed and even blushed as she thought about the last days of their relationship. She never forgot. I know what you're thinking, Beck. Brad gave her a lustful smile and winked. You're so smug, Casanova. She laughed. I am the devil. I would marry you, Beck. I need to return to England after the season is over. I would take you with me, my wife. We would have children. She jumped on him, knocking him onto the couch. She kissed him. He picked her up and carried her to bed, and he gave her a thorough and complete sexual adventure like the one they had when he handed her over to Todd. When they finished, he said, Sorry, I'm a little out of practice. She laughed. She said, Now what? I cheated. She felt embarrassed, but knew she would do it again if the opportunity arose. In fact, the opportunity arose at that very moment, and she did it again. Afterwards, Becky took a shower and thought about what had happened and what had been said. Apparently, she broke her vows with Todd. In fact, she almost did it to that creepy guy. She believed that if she stayed with Todd and Beth, she would eventually cheat. You wouldn't need Brad for this. She was ashamed of it, but she was realistic. She needed to change her situation. The real question was whether she would cheat on Bradley. Given their sexual compatibility, she thought not. But they also had good sex with Todd and Beth, and it still wasn't enough. She decided to stay with Brad until he returned to England and then see what happened. This meant she needed to break the news to Todd and Beth. Did she want Brad with her at that moment? Maybe it wasn't the best idea. She thought Todd and Brad might start a fight. Brad probably would have won if Beth hadn't helped Todd. But no matter who won, everyone would lose. She talked to Brad about her decision, and he agreed that she should move in with him for the remaining 5 months of the season. A little later, Becky opened the door to their house. Todd and Beth were preparing dinner. She entered the kitchen. Hello. Her voice and behavior were uncertain. Todd looked at her. Beth, too. Todd and Beth exchanged glances. None of them needed to say anything. They understood. Beth was both sad and happy. Todd was devastated at that moment. He froze, staring at Becky. Becky said, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I love you both. Todd, I love you. But I just have to do it. Brad and I are right for each other, like I'm not right here. You fit here, Becky. Beth was firm. But maybe later, with the kids and everything, no. Becky looked at her. She suddenly understood the situation. She said, You knew this was coming, Beth. She didn't accuse, she simply stated a fact. Not exactly. I was hoping so. Beth was now starting to cry. Todd was still calm, frozen, but with tears slowly streaming down his emotionless face. Beth and Becky looked at him and were both very worried about what they saw. They both came over to hug him, and they did hug him, but Becky retreated after a while. She quietly said to Todd, "I love you, my hot toddy. I will always love you." She whispered that last one. "Beth will take care of you." Becky turned and ran out the door. Beth and Todd stood in the kitchen, watched her leave, and stared at the door for a moment. Then Beth said, "You knew it too, Todd. Not just me. You too." They hugged each other and fell on the kitchen floor. The rice began to burn. They both looked at it, and Beth took it off the stove. She looked inside. "We can still eat it." She said it matter-of-factly, and Todd nodded. Luckily, they hadn't started cooking the salmon when Becky walked in. They cooked and ate dinner, saving a third portion for lunch. They drank some Chablis. None of them spoke much. They put the dishes away, and Beth said, "Let's go for a walk." The walk was quite long, again without further ado. As they approached their block, Todd said, "I hope Brad treats her well. I want to kill him, but I hope he treats her well. When he left her, he seemed like a good guy. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he loves her. And I think they're good for each other." "I hope so. I don't want to buy a gun." Beth laughed at the thought. Todd didn't laugh at all. Later, in bed, Beth rolled over onto Todd, and she pinned him halfway to her side of the bed. "I would never hurt you, Todd. Not like this. I would never do that. Never." Beth cried as she said this, but her voice was firm. Todd knew it was true. She would never hurt him if she could avoid it. The next time they fought, which was a few days later, he remembered her promise not to hurt him. She pressed him anyway. "I did not mean it." She put him in an arm lock, and he submitted. She tensed, and they started laughing. It was good. The divorce did not take long since it was uncontested and without children. By the time Brad was ready to return to England, Becky was free. Todd, too. They hadn't seen each other much since Becky left that night. It didn't seem right. Beth helped Becky move her things with the movers Brad hired. Todd was at the gym when this happened. Beth has won too many wrestling matches. Brad and Becky were licensed and were getting married at the local magistrate's office. Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Todd and Beth also received their license. Beth forced him to propose when she grabbed him in a weird wrestling hold. He didn't mind. But he was getting stronger and was going to surprise her on her honeymoon. They decided to do it as quickly as possible without unnecessary hassle. They went to the magistrate's office. The woman at the front desk looked a little unsure. "We have one couple scheduled for 2 o'clock. They should be here any minute." "We can wait," Todd said. They had just sat down on the couch when Brad and Becky walked in. Todd saw them first. He jumped up. Brad stepped back, but Todd didn't do anything. "Sorry," Todd said. "Sorry, I reacted poorly. It's just a shock." "Why are you here, Todd?" Becky was puzzled. She saw no reason why the two of them should attend the small ceremony. Beth said, "We came to get married, and I think you did too. We just wanted to do it quickly. We're leaving for the Bahamas tomorrow for our honeymoon." Brad looked at Todd. Todd returned the look. Brad was not one for conflict, and he was always a little ashamed of what he had done. He also noticed that Todd had become more muscular. He smiled when he saw this. Todd saw him smile, but he wasn't offended because it wasn't an evil grin, just a funny smile. Brad said, "You pumped up just for me, Todd?" "No," Todd answered briefly. He wasn't going to tell Bradley why he needed to get stronger. But Becky knew. She started giggling. She looked at Beth. "Watch out, girl." She said this with a teasing tone. Beth blushed. She was well aware of Todd's gym routine. She was looking forward to her honeymoon. But she started laughing out loud when Todd said, "It was a surprise. Surprise. I sleep with you every night. You've gained 10 pounds of muscle." "I always knew." Brad was still puzzled. Becky told him she would explain later. The judge came out of his office and looked at the four. "Who is first?" Beth looked at Becky. Becky said, "Maybe we can all do it at once since we're all here." Nobody else objected. Todd almost said, but damn, He had a hard time staying mad at Becky. The receptionist, who was about to call 911, collected documents. Beth signed Becky's marriage license, and Becky signed for Beth. The four of them entered the judge's office, which was decorated with a rusty red robe. The ceremony was short for each couple. Then it was all over. Beth and Todd hugged and kissed, as did Becky and Brad. The four left the office. They stood outside, feeling awkward. Brad came over. He extended his hand to Todd. "Congratulations, Todd. I hope you're happy." They shook hands. Todd said, "Mutually for you too. I really mean it." Beth and Becky hugged. Perhaps a little too long for comfort for Brad's comfort. Brad hugged Beth warmly. Todd and Becky looked at each other and stepped towards each other at the same time. They hugged for a long time. Before he let go, Todd whispered, "Be happy. Be happy." Becky replied, "You too, Toddy." She turned, took Brad's hand, and they left. Todd and Beth watched. Then they left. They had a lot to do before their trip to the Bahamas. Beth began to think about Todd's new strong physique. She thought her winning streak might end suddenly. Maybe a new series of victories will begin. That night, they went out to a sumptuous dinner and made slow love when they returned home. As for the Bahamas, all of Beth's wishes came true. 1998. Brad became the new football coach at the university. His English career brought him fame and fortune, and Becky increased this wealth by following the wise advice of her former lovers. Brad's football career lasted another 10 years. Everything is in the same English major league. He was a good but not a great player, but he had a talent for victories. His career was marked by moments when he did something unusual and was successful. He himself could not explain why or how this happened, but he knew when it was supposed to happen a little earlier. It was the reason why he loved playing so much those moments where he was the difference in a truly competitive match. Brad and Becky were still married. They had 2 children, a boy, Lee, 15 years old, and a girl, Elizabeth, 13 years old. They were both beautiful and athletic children. Beth and Todd lived 20 miles from the university. They were quite rich now. They call it the super rich. Todd's intuition has proven to be very useful in programming. Beth's help was good, but her main contribution was program deals. Todd's programs were everywhere now, and they brought them huge incomes. This was not widely known. Neither Todd nor Beth wanted their children to be rich kids. They had 4 children. Twin boys, 14 years old, Rich and Thomas. Twin girls, 12 years old, Elizabeth and Mary. All 4 were big, strong, and smart. Perhaps too smart. They all went to public school. When Brad got a job at the university, Becky consulted with Todd and Beth about buying a house and schools. In England, their children attended private schools called public schools there. They eventually bought a house about a mile from Todd and Beth's home. Todd and Brad have reached some level in their relationship, mainly because of the ocean between them. But Beth and Becky were in constant communication, especially in the age of the internet and email. And on holidays, the couples ate dinner together when Brad and Becky visited. One summer, the entire family, parents and children, spent a 2-week vacation on the beach in Chincoteague, so the kids knew each other and got along. Todd lived through it all, but he never felt comfortable. It tormented him. Even though his life with Beth, his family, his wealth was wonderful, he was still resentful of his divorce. Deeply offended so much that it ruined the time together organized by women. Brad didn't feel it, but he felt it with Todd. However, families were going to communicate a lot more. Children had to go to the same schools. Todd could imagine barbecues, dinners out, maybe even a game of golf. Todd started playing golf. He also continued to strength train, but added a whole block of movements to his training when he felt he was getting too stiff. All 4 were about 40 years old. Beth looked good. Todd and Brad looked good. Becky was still beautiful. Brad and Becky did not have as smooth a marriage as Todd and Beth. Brad cheated twice, but only for a week each time. Becky cheated once, but for a month, with Brad's boss. Each discovered the other's disorder, and each time there was forgiveness of a sort. They had children, and that mattered, although not enough to prevent cheating. By the time they returned to the U.S., it was all settled. But Brad was a famous and handsome guy, and Becky was just so desirable. Todd thought about all this as Becky and Brad moved into their new home. He wondered for a moment what might happen if he and Beth tried to win Becky back. He asked Beth about it. "Do you want to have sex with Becky again?" Beth was stunned. "Well, I always want her. You do too. But I would never do it. Maybe you could do it." "I wouldn't. No. Well, no." She paused. Then she said, "But she's a woman. There's no threat to our marriage. You see, it couldn't be the same. We were young." They stopped there. They did nothing. The children grew up, became their own people, and 6 years later, the younger twins went off to college. None of the children went to university. They all wanted some distance, and their parents, all four of them, understood this. The closest were the twin girls in Philadelphia, more than 2 hours away. As a result, parents had free time. Becky and Brad were a year ahead on this one. At public meetings, they spoke about it enthusiastically. Becky told Beth that Brad had become more perverted, but she did not specify what exactly this perversion includes and whether there are several of them. However, one day when Beth was at Becky's house, she found adult toys in the living room. Now she was really intrigued. She imagined Brad tied up. Then she imagined Todd tied up. When Becky returned to the room, she was taking a shower. Beth threw her handcuffs. She said, "So what?" Becky smiled. "I took control. I like it. He does too." "I can't believe it. What are you doing with him?" "Whatever I want when he's tied up. I don't hurt him much." "Are there any more toys?" Becky went to the bedroom. Beth followed her. Becky took the box out of her dresser. She opened it. Sometimes she thought about doing it with Todd when she was beating him in a fight. She's been winning a few fights lately because she's been taking jiu-jitsu lessons. She could break out of the hold and counterattack. Todd has started taking the same lessons, but hasn't caught up yet. He was still stronger than her, but not enough to compensate for her training. Beth's attitude was that what goes around comes around. Becky said, "You can't tell Todd. Brad would be horrified." "Are you going to tell him that you let me know about his new kink?" What would you do if I told you?" "I would smile and confuse him. I like that idea, but I wouldn't take advantage of it. Well, not much. I have to tell you that I let Bradley reclaim his manhood with a young woman. He has a room on campus. He sees her there. I let him be with her every 2 weeks. What is she like?" "She's a returning student, 30 years old, well-built, blonde. She's married, but apparently her husband doesn't mind." "Becky, you're such an interesting person. I'm glad we didn't lose touch when you left. I would have missed a lot. Now, oh my." "You know," she said, "I'm free to date whoever I want. Now. HM. Becky smiled. "Why don't you invite us to dinner this Friday? And then Brad can go home and I'll stay. That is, if Todd is interested. You broke his heart, but we'll see. I'll let you know." "Are you still fighting?" Beth looked at Becky. "Yes, we always fought." "Who is winning?" "Right now, I usually win, but in a few weeks, he'll be on top again." "So if you win, what do you do with it?" Becky looked at the strap-on. Beth looked at him. "Ooh, you're such a fidget." She felt her breathing become a little faster. Becky said, "When he wins, does he do this to you?" "It happens. You know, if I show him this thing before we start, he'll become a tiger. He's stronger than me." Becky sighed. "Well, there's a lot to think about. I'd still like to stay the night. We'll see what happens." They left it at that. That night, Beth waited until dinner to discuss it with Todd. "Honey, I talked to Becky today. She is giving Bradley some space." Todd looked up. "You mean that young woman he entertains every other Tuesday?" "Damn, you knew it." "Yeah, I didn't know she knew." "Well, she lets him, and so, she's free." to have fun too. And you want? Maybe we should invite her over for the night like before. Todd thought about it. He went to the kitchen and took a glass of sparkling water. He returned to the living room. I can never be with her again, Beth. I can see her and talk to her without having problems. But I know maybe you want her me too. But I can never again see her in this light. I might hit her. I still have very bad feelings for her. Oh, okay. She's my friend. You never said. There was no need. I don't mind you being friends with her. I'd have a real problem if it went any further. Okay, I'll tell her no. She'll be sad. Are you upset? Yes, but I remember my promise to you. I will never hurt you, Todd. I will tell her. The next day, Beth went to Becky to discuss it. They were in Becky's kitchen. Beth said, Todd feels like he can't rekindle any new relationship with you, Becky. He says he just can't do it. He has feelings about the past. Maybe I could convince him if I had the chance. Not a good idea. Becky, if you try, it could end very badly for you, me, and him. Becky began to cry. What about us? You and me? Beth simply shook her head. I think I ruined everything. A long time ago. Yeah, I never realized how much it hurt Todd. Sorry. He hates me. Oh no. She actually started crying. Beth hugged her and whispered, He doesn't hate you, Beck. He probably still loves you a little. We can all be friends. Beth left when Becky calmed down. Becky felt empty. All her married life, she had a sparkling life with Todd and Beth. She considered him ideal, and when the opportunity arose, she wanted to bring him back. Todd's refusal hurt, but she was a survivor, and she still had Brad. She loved him. She also loved how she took control in their marriage. She'll just have to deal with it. One day, a few weeks later, Beth received a package from an anonymous source. She opened it. Inside were new toys for adults. No note. Beth put it away in a drawer in the bedroom. She thought of it as Becky's revenge. She smiled every time she thought about it. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.